Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I hate to sound like a smarty pants, but I've been saying in recent videos that we're likely to hear more right-wing sounding messaging from the Labour Party when it comes to immigration. They're finally realising that the game is up and that the public are really going to reform in big numbers. What that means is they're going to try and push back and win some of the votes back by stating they too care about our borders, even though they're the ones with their ideology that led to this madness in the first place. But come on, we all know what's going on here. This is all just politicking. I mean, who's really going to trust Yvette Cooper with our borders, another mousy-looking English teacher type that'd call you racist and fascist for saying you want Europe to remain majority European? So in essence, it's another establishment ploy. They might have to slow things down for a few years, but it won't make a massive difference to the globalist project. In 20 years, the British people, like the rest of the European people, will still be made a minority in their homeland, and the ideology of the Yvette Coopers of this world will come into fruition in all its horror. You could say that Starmer shares the same ideology, but I don't quite know. He seems to be such an empty suit to me, such an empty vessel, so robotic, he'll just do whatever his globalist overlords demand, whether it's right-wing, centrist or left-wing. But the real reason I wanted to make this video was to say how frustrating I can often find it when our political leaders will say, well, we're going to get illegal immigration under control. We're going to bring the numbers down from, 1 million to 500,000. Oh, great. Of course, the problem here is that, the serum is already in. We've already invited millions upon millions of people, many of whom are hostile to us and don't like us at all, from the third world. They're breeding as well. So this problem isn't going to go away simply by lessening immigration a bit. Second to that, I do wonder how long the post-racial multicultural rhetoric can really be maintained in the Western world. I think many European and Western nations are experiencing the problems now. Of course, you get in a lot of trouble if you point them out, but the point here is, as I've spoken about before on the channel, I think many Westerners are realising that they adopted the liberal worldview. They were post-religious, post-racial, post-ethnic group bias, all this sort of stuff. And it's really turning out that many other groups who've come here aren't at all. And while white people are often told that they're the most toxic and oppressive, it seems that other groups really don't want to let go of their identities, and to be honest, why should they? This isn't helped by the liberal mainstream promoting other ethnic and religious groups, of course. That just allows them to bury in even more. But the reason I'm saying all this is I saw this graph the other day. It's from the American National Election Studies. It's from 2021. And here you can see how different racial groups rate each other. I don't know how accurate this is. Maybe someone needs to do more research. But it does seem to me to be at least roughly true. You can see white respondents rate whites roughly the same as everyone else. A tiny, tiny bias. But pretty much they just view everyone as okay, the same. That is the liberal ideology, you could say, that's dominated the Western world. But when you look at other groups, you can see that they highly value their own group. I mean, look at Hispanics. They think they're far better than everyone else. They think blacks and Asians are okay and whites are terrible. Blacks, unsurprisingly, think whites are absolutely terrible, or they're absolutely great. They think Asians, Hispanics are pretty terrible too, but not nearly as bad as whites. Asians think whites are the worst. I was surprised about that. I thought Asians didn't mind us, but there you go. They think blacks aren't much better, but are better than the whites. Hispanics are a little worse than the blacks, but of course better than the whites, and the Asians themselves think they're great too. Now, we all know the liberal mainstream would eat someone like me for lunch if they caught wind of this. They just say, you're a racist, you're a fascist, or you're calling for some white nationalism. But on the contrary, as I've said before, I'm not one of these people with a swastika on his head screaming and foaming at the mouth. I'm just a simple British man, a European, who's looking around and seeing that the multicultural liberal ideology isn't exactly panning out like they said it would. In fact, I've said from the beginning of this channel, what if their plan doesn't work? What then? Now, you may have noticed you never get an answer to that question. You'll just be called a racist and made a pariah. There's a sort of puritanicalism about it all. If you don't believe in the liberal project, you're just evil. You're not even worth consideration. However, I saw this again on Twitter recently, and it sums up the point I'm trying to make. Here we have three, quote, British people of what is Indian and Pakistani descent arguing over the India and Pakistan war. As you can see, Rishi Sunak here is defending India, saying it shouldn't have to accept terrorist attacks. Funny, isn't it, how people from different parts of the world tend to have a bias to their home countries? Bushra Sheikh, I think she's Pakistani, British. She states, once the PM of the UK, Rishi Sunak is a far-right Hindutva. I guess the far-right thing works on Indians too. Didn't know that, but there we go. And then in response to that, Narinder Kaur, who people think is a Muslim, she's not a Muslim, she's a Sikh. Remember, Kaur is basically the female version of Singh, meaning she's a Sikh. She says she loves Bushra, but she's going to take the side of India too. How surprising, given she's got Sikh ancestry. Yet remember, according to the liberal mainstream, these people are just as British as me, someone whose family goes back here for thousands of years. However, I don't really have a dog in the fight here. I don't really care who wins between India and Pakistan. It's sad if they're fighting, I'm sorry if innocent people are dying, but it's just not my issue. And all of this points to a theme I've been speaking about a lot on the channel, and that's what is the mainstream going to do about this? Because it can't keep denying that this is real. As soon as you land at Heathrow or Gatwick or wherever, you don't magically become English or Scottish or Welsh or wherever you end up in Britain. You still have a loyalty, a heritage and a history to your homeland. And of course we've seen that spill out on the streets between Indians and Pakistanis and so on. However, it seems to me that the liberal project is being undermined by this, and they're not going to go back on themselves. So there's only one way they are going to go. That way, to me, is more censorship and more draconian measures. I know it's a cliche, but I think things will become increasingly Orwellian. We will have to celebrate the good of diversity while we see the violence on the streets. We're pretty much there already in reality. And this leaves us with a big question. Why are they doing this? Well, in one sense, some are just liberal ideologues and useful idiots. But as I've said before, behind it all is money power. It's the system in the West itself. It's bigger than just nations. And it's that which I think is the thing we're going to have to address one day down the line. The way that we do that, in my view, is we realign with the tradition, we rediscover who we are, we become wise, calm, peaceful, sensible, rational, and we can move forward. But if we can get corrupted all too easily, you will see that we'll start to fall apart as well. That's why I promote a lot of spiritual and personal transformation on the new channel. Do check that out down below if you're interested. Other than that, you can join me on the Substack for exclusive content. And do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. Have a good rest of the day.